Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of Diana's Diary Room. If you like the show, please make sure you retweet it and share it on Facebook with others. We're going to get right into the show today with getting you up to speed on the night's events.
Here's Diana to get you up to speed last night on Big Brother.
Brendan and Rachel spent most of yesterday secluded by themselves. Rachel was angry all day long. She made snide little comments all day long, gave dirty stares all day long, was pumping herself up to win HOH, and getting used to the idea of fighting on her own without Brendan. Of course, during the live eviction, Brendan was evicted from the house, and Rachel was determined to win HOH, and she was going to make everybody scared. But then we went into the HOH endurance competition, and things changed. Last night's HOH contest was an endurance competition. All of the house guests each had a lane. They were covered in soap and water, and they had to go from one end of the lane, transferring liquid to a bowl that was waiting for them at the other end of the lane, and back and forth and back and forth. In the early going, Jordan, Portia, and Jeff were in the lead. Jordan was doing an amazingly good job until she fell and got a lot of soap in her eyes, but up to the halfway point, Jordan really kept pace with Jeff and Portia. Jeff and Portia were doing a lot of the running back and forth, but he was lapping her several times, and Rachel was keeping pace with Jeff also. The difference is Rachel did not cover her cup, so she was losing a lot of fluid as she went down the lane. Portia and Jeff were both covering their cups, so Portia could go a little bit slower and still do better than Rachel did. It was pretty clear by the halfway point that Jeff was going to win this competition, and he did. He pulled out a great HOH victory for his side of the house. As soon as Danny, Kalia, and Portia are alone, the first thing Danny does is say, "Don't get down, girls, because if I can get Jeff to put up Kalia and Portia, I can still play HOH, and then or POV, and then all three of us have a chance to pull one of us off the block. So don't get upset yet." Then the next thing they go into is, how do we get Rachel up? They should really put Rachel up. Rachel is this, Rachel is that. Maybe we can talk them into getting Rachel up. Now this goes on for some time, and actually Shelley is joining in on it at certain points in the evening. Shelley kind of hoping that Jeff will put up Rachel. This is not going to happen. Jeff realizes that he needs Rachel as a number, as an ally, and no matter how much she may annoy him, he's not going to put her up. I gotta tell you, Shelley really annoyed me tonight. In the HOH room tonight, she laid into Rachel pretty much out of nowhere. And she says, "Rachel, you can't be giving me dirty looks." Now we all know Rachel gives them. I'm not saying she doesn't. But Rachel, you can't be talking about me. You can't be doing this. You can't be doing that. And the whole time, Shelley has stolen Rachel's puppy and has been talking about her to every single person in the house. It's a little bit hypocritical high horse crap that, it's sooner or later they all do, but it just ticked me off. Jeff cuts the tension in the HOH room by reading a letter from Marley, his little niece, and he makes light of the situation that Shelley has suddenly brought up in the HOH room. After Shelley leaves, she gives everybody a high five, says she's put it under the, she's squashed it, and then immediately goes downstairs to bash Rachel some more. Then Rachel, Jeff, and Jordan have a strategy meeting. Rachel, at this point, is being really quite normal, thinking clearly, and if this was the Rachel we saw every day, I would love to play the game with that girl. Unfortunately, we got Rachel who is, angry one minute, and then Rachel who is clear thinking the next. So they have a good strategy meeting, and they talk about the different options for Danny. The key here is, what is that veto ticket going to do? Anyone who believes that Jordan isn't playing this game and is just going to float to the end is sadly mistaken. Jordan plays this game every day. Whether or not she wins a lot of comps means nothing. Jordan has amazing grasp on each house guest and what they're thinking and their motives. Check Jordan out in this following feed flashback. Jordan's ability to read people and see where they're coming from is uncanny. She can sleuth out most people's motives and who's doing what. Check out Feed 1, August 18th at 11:56. Adam comes up to the HOH and pushes for Danny and Kalia to go on the block because Adam is always going to protect Portia because in the end he wants Portia, not Jeff. So the key to this week's nomination is not who you want out so much as how does Danny's veto ticket play into the scenario. Jeff has said that before he makes his nominations, he's going to the DR to get exactly the rules for the veto ticket because it makes a difference. Danny is going to play for power veto no matter what. Does he put her on the block and only have 6 people playing for veto? Does he take Portia and Kalia on the block and kind of half semi stick to the truce that they worked out? Neither one of them believe in the truths. Danny doesn't believe any of the stuff she said. Jeff and Jordan don't believe any of the stuff Danny says. But if he shows a good faith with her, maybe next week if she wins HOH, he says, see, I did the same thing for you, and they had this kind of half-brokered trust. It's really dicey, but really, people have to remember that Jeff not putting Danny on the block is the exact same game move as Danny not putting Brendan and Rachel on the block last week. The only difference is Danny is guaranteed to play veto no matter what he does. So, it's a hard choice.
The edit.
The edit is a segment that I particularly like because I'm a live feeder and I know that the CBS show doesn't quite portray things the way they actually happen in the house. So the edit is a segment that I am dedicating to point out the differences of what actually goes on as opposed to the story CBS likes to tell. So this week's victim of editing is Shelley. So I'm not saying Shelley never tells a lie in this house, and I'm not saying that Shelley doesn't cover her bases by making deals with many people. But what I am saying is that CBS did a masterful job of editing to make it look like Shelley did a Final 3 deal with Brendan and Rachel. And the truth is she didn't. You have to go back to feeds 3 and 4 on August 3rd, 9:17 a.m. Brendan and Rachel are campaigning to Shelley, hardcore campaigning, giving her reasons why Jeff and Jordan shouldn't be together, why vote out Jordan over Brendan, etc. Shelley, in return, is asking a bunch of hypothetical scenarios. And CBS took a snippet of a hypothetical question and portrayed it as Shelley making a Final 3 deal with Brendan and Rachel. So, Shelley's not perfect. Shelley makes up lies and does the same things that everybody else does, but the editing was totally false on that one. I have a special guest this morning. His name is Powell Mansfield, and I would like to welcome Powell to the show. Good morning, Powell. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Diana. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm great, Powell, and I want to thank you for being the very first guest on the very first Diana's Diary Room on YouTube. Now, Powell, you are a morning recap host on Superpass, aren't you?
I am one of the hosts on Superpass. My show is called The Life Fest, and it airs every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Superpass. We had our first show this past Wednesday, and there were some technical difficulties and mistakes on my part, so first show glitches. Hopefully we'll be back and better than ever next Wednesday to start a great span of shows for you guys.
I'm sure as you get used to the Superpass, you'll do very well. I certainly enjoyed my time on Superpass. And, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So, Powell, let's get right into it. What player are you going to do an in-depth talk about today?
Alright, the player I want to discuss is Shelley. I think she's one of the most interesting house guests game-wise this year, just because she's kind of playing all sides while having a concrete alliance with Jeff and Jordan. And I think those are great allies for her. They're all very great social game players, which is obviously very important in the Big Brother game. But what kind of concerns me is that people think she's playing a manipulative game, which you mentioned to me, Diana. And Dr. Will played a very, very manipulative game, and he was one of the most popular house guests ever, even now. So I don't really know why people are giving Shelley a hard time about that. I think she needs to cover all her bases, because letting the whole house know that she's in a concrete alliance with Jeff and Jordan, even though they might suspect it already, is not the best idea if she wants to keep a target off her back. So I think she's playing a great game right now. I would love for her to pull out an HOH this week, or a veto, just so that the house guests know that she's not a floater and don't nominate her for that fact. Because I don't think she's floating at all. She just needs to prove herself to the house guests competition-wise. Because while competitions aren't the whole game, they're important nonetheless. So those are my thoughts on Shelley.
Well, Paul, that's kind of interesting. Comparing, a lot of people have compared Shelley to Dr. Will, some favorably, some not so favorably, and you gotta wonder at what point is it that a guy can get away with certain things that a woman can't. So I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on Shelley and spending the first show with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Diana. And everyone, you can check out my Superpass show, The Life Vest with Powell, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Superpass. See y'all later.
So my laugh out loud moment this time goes to Portia. Now, when you're packing for the BB house, somehow I'm thinking pasties isn't one of the things you put in your bag. But for Portia, a must-have was tracksuits and pasties. This is why she has no other clothes, apparently. So in these next several photos, you will see Adam having Portia's pasties put on his bleeding sore nipples from the competition. And Danny is writing Farrah's name in nail polish on the pasties. The Adam and the hairy chest with the pasties, not so funny. Portia packing pasties for the BB house? Now that's funny. So let's sum things up. Brendan was evicted. Jeff won HOH. Danny is thinking she might be able to play and pull one of her friends off. The veto ticket is very important to Jeff's nominations. It will make the difference whether or not he puts Danny up on the block straight away or tries to backdoor her. He is very much wanting to backdoor Danny if at all possible. He's planning on anybody but Danny winning HOH. Danny goes on the block. But I think the veto ticket is actually going to change his nominations to having Danny put directly up on the block. Now, things to watch for on the feeds today. There will be a have-not competition of some sort today. And personally, I want to see Portia not only nominated, but in have-not. Pardon me. The reason why, Portia was so critical of Jordan when Jordan was nominated and a have-not for several weeks, and saying how she's not fun and all these other things. And I would like to see Portia feel a little bit of that. My guess is that Danny, Kalia, and Portia will end up being have-nots. And I'm also going to guess that Danny will end up on the block today. Nominations are at 5 o'clock. And I could be wrong, but I think the veto ticket is going to change Jeff's mind from wanting to backdoor Danny or to just putting her up straight away. Now, it will be interesting. I'm pretty sure the other person will be Kalia, because he told her straight to her face when she nominated him, look, when it's my turn, I'm nominating you. Portia will get to skate another week, and that's annoying. But, you know, you take what you can. You can only get rid of one person a week.